Inflation and recession are the two economic words you hear the most, and they get mixed up constantly. They sound like the same bad news. They are not. They're almost opposites, and telling them apart changes how you read every headline about your money. Here's why it matters before we even define them. When you confuse the two, you make the wrong move. You brace for job losses when the real threat is prices, or you worry about prices when the real threat is your paycheck. Getting this straight is worth real money to you. So here's the plain answer, no teasing. Inflation is when prices go up. Recession is when the economy shrinks. Inflation is measured in prices. Recession is measured in activity, meaning jobs, spending, and output. One is your money buying less. The other is the whole economy doing less. That's the core difference. That's the short version. But the reason these two get tangled together is genuinely strange, because the cure for one can actually cause the other. Central banks fight inflation with a tool that can trigger a recession on purpose. We'll get to that, and it's the part most people never connect. There's also a smaller puzzle I'll answer halfway through. There's a rare, ugly situation where both happen at the same time, which shouldn't even be possible by the normal rules. By the end, you'll know exactly what that is, what it's called, and the 1 decade it wrecked. Let's build it properly. Start with inflation, because it's the one you feel every week. Inflation is a sustained rise in the general level of prices. Notice those two words, sustained and general. One product getting pricey isn't inflation. Inflation is when the whole basket climbs month after month and keeps climbing. In the United States, this gets measured by the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. The government tracks the price of a basket of everyday things, groceries, rent, gas, and reports how much that basket changed. When you hear inflation was 3%, that's the basket costing 3% more than a year ago. Here's the part people miss. A little inflation is normal, and central banks actually want it. The Federal Reserve aims for about 2% a year. That's the healthy zone. The problem is only when it runs hot, 5, 6, 8%, because then your paycheck can't keep up and your savings quietly lose value. That's really what inflation steals. Purchasing power. The same $20 buys less bread this year than last year. Your money didn't disappear, it just got weaker. That's the catch with inflation. It's a slow leak, not a crash. And there's an opposite worth knowing, because it sets up the next part. When prices fall instead of rise, that's deflation. Sounds great, cheaper stuff. It isn't. If people expect prices to keep dropping, they stop spending and wait. And an economy where nobody spends starts to freeze. Hold that thought, because freezing is exactly what a recession feels like. Now the other word. A recession is not about prices at all. A recession is when economic activity shrinks across the board for a sustained stretch. Less production, less spending, fewer jobs. The engine isn't overheating. It's stalling. Here's where almost everyone gets the definition wrong, and I want you to be the person in the room who gets it right. You've probably heard that a recession is 2 straight quarters of shrinking GDP. That's a handy rule of thumb. It is not the official definition. In the US, recessions are officially called by a group called the National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBER. Their real definition is a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy, lasting more than a few months. No single magic number. They look at the whole picture. And that distinction isn't just trivia. Look at 2001. There was a recession, but it did not have 2 consecutive quarters of falling GDP. Now flip it. In 2022, the US did have 2 straight negative quarters, and the NBER did not call it a recession because jobs were still booming. The rule of thumb failed both times. The full picture won. So what does the NBER actually watch? Real income, employment, industrial production, sales, and yes, GDP. They weigh the depth of the decline, how widely it spreads, and how long it lasts. If it's deep, broad, and lasting, it's a recession. That's the test. And what a recession feels like on the ground is simple and hard. Companies see less demand, so they cut back. Cutting back means layoffs. Layoffs mean less spending, which means even less demand. It feeds on itself. That downward spiral is the thing a recession really is. Let's line them up side by side, because now the contrast is sharp. Inflation, prices up, economy running too hot. Recession, activity down, economy running too cold. Inflation, jobs are usually plentiful and wages chase prices. Recession, jobs vanish and wages stall. One is a fever, the other is hypothermia. Opposite problems. Which raises the obvious question. If they're opposites, why do people always talk about them together? Here's where it clicks, and this is the connection I promised. The main weapon against high inflation is the interest rate. When inflation runs hot, the Federal Reserve raises interest rates. Higher rates make borrowing expensive, so people and businesses spend less, and when spending cools, prices stop climbing so fast. That's the intended effect. But look closer at what spend less really means. Less spending is also exactly what causes a recession, so the tool that fights inflation can push the economy toward a downturn. It's a tightrope. Cool things down just enough and you get what's called a soft landing. Inflation drops, no recession. Push too hard and you get a hard landing, a recession. Same lever, two very different outcomes. That's why they share every headline. They're linked by the fix, not by the cause. And here's a clean pattern that ties it together. Inflation usually falls during a recession because when people lose jobs and stop buying, prices lose their fuel. In fact, since World War II, rising inflation has come before nearly every US recession. First the economy overheats, then the cool down overshoots. One often leads to the other. Now the puzzle I set up earlier. If inflation means too hot and recession means too cold, they should never happen at once, right? Wrong. Sometimes they do, and it has a name. Stagflation. Stagflation is the nightmare combo. High inflation, stagnant growth, and high unemployment, all at the same time. Prices are punishing you, and there are no jobs to earn more. The textbook case is the 1970s, when oil shocks sent prices soaring while the economy stalled. It broke the normal rule book, and it's brutal precisely because the usual cures work against each other. Fight the inflation, deepen the recession. Fight the recession, feed the inflation, that's the trap. There's even a rough one-number gauge for the total pain, invented by an economist named Arthur Okun. Add the inflation rate to the unemployment rate, and you get the misery index. High prices plus high joblessness equals a high score. It's crude, but it captures why stagflation feels so bad. It stacks both problems on top of each other. So let's bring it home. Inflation is about prices rising, and it steals your purchasing power quietly. Recession is about the economy shrinking, and it steals jobs and income. They're measured differently. Prices versus activity. They usually move in opposite directions, and they're connected by the interest rate lever that central banks pull to fight one and risk the other. And in the rare case where both hit together, that's stagflation. Now you can read any economic headline and know which one is actually at your door, and whether the cure they're describing might quietly summon the other. That's the whole game. Here's my question for you. Which one would you rather live through? A year of high inflation or a short, sharp recession? There's no easy answer, and I genuinely want to hear your reasoning. Tell me in the comments.